April 13th, 1945. Zwolle, Netherlands. 2 hours past midnight. A single gunshot cracks through the darkness. Then another, and another. Within minutes, the entire city erupts into chaos. Explosions, screams, the staccato rhythm of machine gun fire echoing off ancient Dutch buildings. German soldiers scramble from their positions, shouting into radios, convinced they are under full-scale assault. But here is what makes no sense. There is only one man, one Canadian soldier, one eye, running through the streets alone. His name is Leo Major, and in the next 6 hours, he will do something that military historians still argue is impossible. He will single-handedly liberate an entire city of 50,000 people from Nazi occupation, alone, in one night. Now, I know what you are thinking. This sounds like a movie, like some Hollywood script written by someone who does not understand how war actually works. One man cannot defeat an entire German garrison. One man cannot make hundreds of trained soldiers abandon their posts and flee in terror. It defies every principle of military strategy, every rule of combat, every measure of human capability. And yet it happened. But here is where the story gets strange. Because the official records do not quite add up, the Canadian military reported 93 German soldiers in Zwolle that night. 93. That is the number you will find in history books, in official documentation, in the accounts approved by military command. Except German archives tell a different story. Documents declassified decades later suggest there were over 300 soldiers stationed in that city. 300, not 93. Someone is lying, or someone is hiding something. And the people who lived in Zwolle that night, they tell an even stranger version. Dutch civilians later swore they heard multiple soldiers fighting. 20, maybe 30 different voices. Different positions, different tactics. They describe what sounded like a coordinated assault by an entire platoon, not the desperate actions of a lone man with a death wish. So what really happened in Zwolle? Was Leo Major truly alone, or is there something the official story is not telling us? Some classified operation that never made it into the history books. Some conspiracy of silence that has lasted 80 years. And here is the question that nobody has been able to answer. How does a man with one functioning eye defeat hundreds of trained soldiers in complete darkness? How does he know exactly where to shoot, where to throw grenades, where to create the illusion of an entire army? It is not just improbable. According to every military expert who has studied this case, it is impossible. Unless Leo Major knew something nobody else did. Unless he had training that was never officially documented. Unless there was a program, a protocol, a secret method that turned ordinary soldiers into something else entirely. The Germans had a name for him. They called him Der Geist, the ghost. They whispered about him in occupied territories across Europe. A phantom who appeared without sound, captured prisoners without firing a shot, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Some German units refused to patrol certain areas because of the rumors, because of him. But ghosts are not real. Ghosts do not liberate cities. Ghosts do not exist in military archives. So, who was Leo Major? And what really happened in those 6 hours of darkness? To understand that impossible night, we need to go back. Back before Zwolle. Back before he lost his eye. Back to the missions that made him a legend. Back to the classified operations that turned him into something the enemy could not explain and the military could not control. Because the liberation of Zwolle was not the beginning of Leo Major's story. It was the culmination, the final proof of something that had been building for months. Something that official records have spent 80 years trying to hide. Hey, before we dive deeper into this absolutely insane story, I just want to say welcome to the channel. If you are into forgotten history, military mysteries, and stories that sound too crazy to be true but absolutely are, you are in the right place. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because we have got a lot more of these coming. Trust me, Leo Major's story only gets more unbelievable from here. Now, where were we? Right, 6 months before Zwolle, August 1944. This is when the legend of the ghost really begins. This is when Leo Major stops being just another soldier and becomes something else. Something the Germans fear. Something his own commanders do not quite know how to handle. This is when the kills stop being recorded. When the missions stop appearing in official logs. When Leo Major enters that gray area between soldier and ghost. And this is where the conspiracy theories start. August 1944. Somewhere in occupied France. A German patrol goes missing. 7 men, experienced soldiers. They simply vanish during a routine sweep. No gunfire, no distress signals, nothing. The next morning, all 7 are found, alive, bound, sitting in a neat row outside a Canadian forward position. Not a single bullet wound on any of them, just identical bruises on the back of their heads. The commanding officer interrogates them separately. Each man tells the same story. They were walking through a forest, then darkness. When they woke up, they were prisoners. None of them saw who took them. None of them heard anything. One moment they were armed and alert. The next, unconscious. The German report lists the captor as unknown. But the soldiers have a different word for it. They call it der Geist, the ghost. This is not an isolated incident. By September, German units across the front are reporting similar encounters. Sentries knocked unconscious without warning. Prisoners taken in complete silence. Supply lines disrupted by someone they never see. And here is the strange part. The Canadian military has no record of these operations. No mission logs. No after-action reports. Nothing official. These captures are happening. The intelligence is flowing back to Allied command, but there is no paper trail explaining how. It is as if someone decided certain missions should not exist on paper. Enter Leo Major, 5'8", wiry build. Nothing physically imposing about him, but his record from this period is bizarre. He is listed as a reconnaissance scout, standard assignment, except his capture rate is impossible. In 3 months, he personally takes 93 German prisoners, 93, by himself. Most scouts consider themselves lucky to capture 1 or 2 enemies in an entire year. Leo is averaging more than 1 per day. His method is equally strange. He does not use his rifle. He uses the stock of his weapon like a surgical instrument, striking the base of the skull with enough force to render someone unconscious, but not enough to kill. It requires perfect precision, perfect timing, perfect silence. Where did he learn this? Canadian military training in the 1940s did not include hand-to-hand combat at this level. Basic bayonet drills, sure, but not this. Not targeted strikes calibrated to incapacitate without killing. Some historians point to a document that surfaced in the 1990s, a German intelligence file that references a Canadian Special Operations program. The code name listed is Project Nightfall. According to this file, Nightfall trained soldiers for solo infiltration behind enemy lines, night operations, silent kills, psychological warfare. The problem? No Canadian or Allied record of Project Nightfall exists, not in declassified documents, not in military archives, not anywhere. So either the Germans invented an entire fictional program to explain what they could not understand, or someone erased every trace of something that actually existed. And Leo Major fits the profile perfectly. Solo operations, night missions, psychological impact far beyond his actual numbers. He is making the Germans paranoid, making them second-guess every shadow, every sound in the dark. But there is another layer to this, another detail that does not make sense. In February 1945, Leo and his partner Wilfried Arsenault are on a mission. They stumble onto a German position, over 100 men. Somehow, impossibly, they capture 93 of them, 2 soldiers taking nearly 100 prisoners. The mission is going perfectly. Then a single shot, a German sniper, Wilfried Arsenault drops, dead before he hits the ground. Leo carries his friend's body back, delivers the prisoners, files his report, and from that moment on, he works alone, completely alone. No partners, no backup, no support. The official explanation is grief, trauma, a soldier who lost his closest friend and could not trust anyone else after that. But some of Leo's surviving unit members tell a different story. They say Wilfried's death was not random. They say the Germans knew about the mission, knew exactly where to position that sniper, as if someone had leaked intelligence. Leo never talks about it, never explains why he refuses partners after that day. But his solo missions become more aggressive, more reckless, like he is trying to prove something, or like he stopped caring whether he survived. And this is the man who, 2 months later, will walk alone into a city occupied by hundreds of German soldiers. This is the man who has spent months perfecting the art of making an enemy believe they are facing an army when they are really facing one soldier with nothing left to lose. This is the man who the Germans fear more than entire battalions. But we still have not answered the central question. How? How does one man, even a highly trained one, create the illusion of a full-scale assault? How does he know exactly how to manipulate sound, movement, and fear to make hardened soldiers abandon their posts? Unless he learned it somewhere. Unless someone taught him. Unless Project Nightfall was real. And if it was real, why did someone want it erased from history? By the way, I am curious. Where are you watching this from right now? What time is it where you are? Drop a comment and let me know. I love seeing how far these stories reach. New Bedford, Massachusetts. 1921. A boy is born to French-Canadian parents. They name him Léo Major. Within a year, the family moves back to Quebec, to a town called Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu. This should be a normal childhood. It is not. His father runs the household like a military camp, discipline through violence, obedience through fear. The kind of home where a child learns very quickly that showing pain only makes things worse, where crying is weakness, where survival means shutting down every natural instinct to feel. By the time Leo is 10 years old, he has already mastered something most people never learn: how to disconnect, how to turn off the part of your brain that registers fear or pain or empathy, how to become, essentially, a machine when you need to be. Child psychologists today have a term for this: dissociative adaptation. It is a survival mechanism. The mind creates a switch. In normal circumstances, you feel everything, but when threat appears, you flip the switch. Emotions go dark. Logic takes over. You do what needs to be done without hesitation or doubt. Most people cannot do this. Most people freeze or panic or break down under extreme stress. But a small percentage, usually those who survive childhood trauma, develop this ability naturally. They become capable of extraordinary calm in situations that would destroy others. Leo Major was one of them. At 14, he makes a decision. He is done with his father, done with the violence, done with that house. He packs nothing, just walks into the woods outside town and disappears. For 8 months, he lives alone in the forest, hunting, trapping, building shelter. A 14-year-old child surviving in the Canadian wilderness through fall, through winter, into spring. No adult supervision, no safety net, just raw survival. When he finally returns to civilization, he is not the same boy who left. Something fundamental has changed. He is harder, colder, he speaks less, trusts no one, and he has learned something crucial about himself. He does not need other people. He actually functions better alone. Most humans are social creatures. Isolation damages us psychologically. We need connection, community, communication. But Leo discovers he is different. Solitude does not break him. It sharpens him. He thinks more clearly when there is no one else around, makes better decisions, moves more efficiently. This is not normal. This is not healthy. But it is perfect training for what comes next. 1940. Europe is burning. Canada enters the war. Leo is 19 years old. He enlists immediately, not out of patriotism, not out of duty, but because civilian life feels suffocating, because he needs structure without intimacy, orders without emotion, purpose without connection. The military is perfect for him, except his recruitment file has a problem, a gap, a missing piece. Standard procedure in 1940 is basic training lasting 16 weeks. Leo completes it in 6. No explanation given, no justification in his records. He is simply fast-tracked through camp and assigned to the Regiment de la Chaudière as a scout. Why? Who authorized this? Who looked at a 19-year-old volunteer and decided he needed accelerated processing? The file does not say. The authorization signature is illegible. The approving officer's name is redacted in every archived copy. But here is what we know. Scouts are not randomly selected. They are chosen for specific psychological traits: comfort with isolation, ability to make decisions without consultation, high tolerance for risk, emotional detachment from outcomes. Leo Major is the perfect candidate, almost suspiciously perfect. By July 1944, he is in France. His first confirmed kill happens on a reconnaissance mission. At least, that is what the official record states. First confirmed kill. His bunkmates tell a different story. Years later, one of them gives an interview. He says Leo had already killed before that mission, multiple times. But those kills never appeared in any report. They happened in the gray space between official operations, in moments when Leo was supposedly scouting alone, but came back with intelligence that could only have been gathered if certain obstacles had been removed. The interviewer asks how many. The veteran will not say, just shakes his head and says, "Enough that we knew, enough that we did not ask questions." This suggests something darker, something the military either knew about and ignored, or never knew about at all. Solo kills with no witnesses, no reports, no accountability. It suggests Leo Major was operating outside normal command structure long before Zwolle, that he had already become something other than a regular soldier, that he had already crossed lines most men never even approach. Modern psychologists who study combat behavior have analyzed Leo's pattern. What they find is fascinating and disturbing. He exhibits traits consistent with what they call mission-specific psychopathy, the ability to completely suppress empathy and moral consideration during operations, then return to relatively normal function afterward. This is not the same as being a psychopath. True psychopaths lack empathy permanently. Leo could turn it on and off, which is arguably more frightening. It means he was aware. He knew what he was doing. He simply chose not to care in the moment. But this ability, this psychological switch, is incredibly rare. Most soldiers cannot do this. Most humans cannot do this. It typically only appears in individuals with specific trauma history combined with specific neurological predisposition. Unless it can be trained, unless someone figured out how to create it artificially, which brings us back to Project Nightfall. Back to the question of whether Leo was born this way or made this way, and back to the night that would prove exactly what he had become. March 8, 1945. A German ammunition depot 20 kilometers behind enemy lines. Leo Major should not be here. This is not his mission. His unit is supposed to be holding a position 15 kilometers south, but Leo has a habit of ignoring orders when he thinks he has found something more important. And he has found something. Intelligence reports suggested this depot was lightly guarded, storage only, no strategic value. But Leo has been watching it for 3 days. The guard rotation is too precise, too military. This is not a simple supply dump. He decides to go in. The approach is textbook, silent, low, using terrain and shadow. He takes out 2 sentries without firing a shot, standard procedure for him at this point. Inside the depot, he finds what he expected: ammunition, explosives, fuel drums. But there is another building, smaller, heavily locked. Guards posted even though the main depot is nearly empty. This is what he came for. He picks the lock, slips inside, and what he sees changes everything. Documents, technical diagrams, calculations in German that he cannot fully read but recognizes. Rocket science, advanced propulsion systems, trajectory mathematics. These are V2 research files. The kind of intelligence that could save thousands of Allied lives if it reaches the right people. Leo is photographing pages when he hears boots outside. Multiple soldiers. Someone discovered the dead sentries. He has maybe 90 seconds before they breach the building. He grabs what he can, stuffs documents inside his jacket, moves toward the back exit. That is when the grenade comes through the window. Not a standard fragmentation grenade. This is white phosphorus. The kind that burns at 5,000 degrees. The kind that does not just kill you, it melts you. The explosion is not loud. It is bright, impossibly bright. And then there is fire everywhere. Chemical fire that sticks to skin and keeps burning. Leo feels his face ignite. The pain is beyond description, beyond anything he has ever experienced. His left eye is gone instantly, just gone. The flesh around it peeling away like wet paper. But here is the thing about Leo Major. Here is what makes him different. He does not scream. He does not drop. He does not go into shock like a normal human being would. He runs. Straight through the fire. Out the back door. Into the forest, with half his face destroyed, and documents still pressed against his chest. He runs for 4 kilometers before he finally collapses. A patrol finds him 6 hours later. By then, infection has already started. The burns are catastrophic. The medic takes one look and calls for immediate evacuation. Leo is barely conscious, delirious with pain. But he will not let go of the documents. "Get these to intelligence," he keeps saying. "Get these to intelligence." They do. The documents contain V-2 launch coordinates, fuel mixture specifications, targeting algorithms. Intelligence estimates later suggest this information helped the Allies destroy 3 launch sites before they became operational, potentially saving hundreds of civilian lives in London. But Leo does not know this yet. He is in a field hospital. A doctor is telling him his war is over. The eye is gone, the doctor says. The surrounding tissue is too damaged. You will be lucky if the infection does not spread to your brain. You are going home, soldier. Leo's response is immediate. No. The doctor blinks. Excuse me? I am not going home. I am going back to my unit. Son, you cannot fight with one eye. Your depth perception is gone. You cannot aim. You cannot... I only need one eye to aim, Leo says. I have been shooting with one eye closed my entire life. Nothing has changed. This is technically true. Marksmanship training teaches you to close your non-dominant eye. But the doctor is talking about more than shooting. He is talking about spatial awareness, combat reflexes, survival. You will be killed, the doctor says flatly. The first firefight you enter, you will be killed. I cannot allow this. Leo looks at him with his one remaining eye. You cannot stop me either. And he is right. Technically, a soldier can refuse medical evacuation if the injury is not immediately life-threatening. It is almost never done. But it is possible. The doctor tries everything. Brings in the commanding officer, brings in a chaplain, brings in other wounded soldiers to talk sense into him. Nothing works. Finally, they make a deal. Leo will remain in hospital for 2 weeks. Let the wound stabilize. Accept a prosthetic eye fitting. In exchange, he can return to active duty. Leo agrees, not because he wants the prosthetic, but because he knows once he is cleared to leave hospital, nobody can force him to do anything. 2 weeks later, he walks out. The prosthetic never happens. Instead, he wears regular eyeglasses. One lens clear, one lens dark. Like he is trying to pretend he still has 2 functioning eyes. Like he refuses to accept what he has become. But here is the medical mystery that nobody talks about. White phosphorus burns in 1945 are essentially a death sentence. Even with modern antibiotics, the survival rate is low. With 1940s medicine, the infection rate is over 60% fatal. Leo Major should have died in that hospital. The odds say he should have died. But he does not. The burns heal. The infection never spreads. Within a month, he is back with his unit, functional, effective, seemingly unaffected by the loss of half his vision. How? How does a man survive injuries that kill trained soldiers with better medical care? How does he adapt to monocular vision in weeks when most people need months or years? How does he return to combat operations that require split-second spatial judgment with half his visual field gone? Unless the injury was not as severe as reported. Unless the medical records were exaggerated for some reason. Unless someone needed Leo Major to appear more damaged than he actually was. Or, unless he was not entirely human to begin with. The documents he saved that night? They disappear into classified channels. No public recognition. No medals for that mission. It is as if it never happened. Just like Project Nightfall. Just like his unexplained kills. Just like everything else about Leo Major that does not fit the official story. 1 month after losing his eye, he volunteers for the Zwolle operation. The impossible mission that will make him a legend. Or expose whatever he really is. Let me read you something. This is from a Dutch resistance fighter named Jan Kuipers. He wrote this in 1948, 3 years after the war ended. It was never published. His family found it in a drawer after he died. Quote, I was hiding in a cellar on Diezersstraat when the shooting started. At first, I thought the Canadians had launched their assault early. The gunfire was coming from multiple directions. North side, east side, south. It sounded like at least 20 men, maybe more, coordinated, professional. I remember thinking, finally, we are being liberated properly. Then I saw him, one man, running past my window, reloading as he moved. And I realized the impossible thing I was hearing. All those guns, all those positions. It was just him, just one man making the sound of many. End quote. That is a first-hand account, from someone who was there. Someone with no reason to lie. Now let me read you another one. This is from a German soldier named Klaus Zimmermann. He was interrogated by Canadian intelligence 6 days after Zwolle fell. The interrogation transcript was classified until 2005. Quote, We thought we were being attacked by a full company. At least 80 men, maybe more. The shooting was everywhere. We could not establish a defensive line because we could not identify where the attack was coming from. Every time we moved to engage one position, fire would come from another direction. My commander ordered retreat because he believed we were outnumbered 5-1. When we learned later it was one man, I did not believe it. I still do not believe it. It is not tactically possible. End quote. 2 witnesses, 2 completely different perspectives, one Dutch, one German, both describing the same impossible event. But here is what makes it even stranger. The timeline does not work. According to military records, Leo entered Zwolle at approximately 11:45 at night. The city was declared secure by 6:15 the next morning. That is 6.5 hours. Except the distance Leo would have needed to cover, hitting every position the Germans reported taking fire from, is over 18 kilometers, on foot, in the dark, while engaging enemy soldiers, while creating the acoustic illusion of multiple attackers. Do the math. That is almost 3 kilometers per hour, sustained, for 6 straight hours, while fighting. Olympic racewalkers cover about 6 kilometers per hour, on flat, clear courses, with no obstacles, no combat, no stopping. Leo would have needed to maintain half that pace while running between buildings, climbing obstacles, firing weapons, throwing grenades, and avoiding return fire, in a city he had never seen before. With one eye, the physical requirement alone is borderline superhuman, but the tactical execution is what makes experts shake their heads. Let me explain how sound works in urban warfare. Buildings create echoes. Narrow streets amplify gunfire. This is basic acoustics. But using it intentionally, using it to create the illusion of multiple firing positions, requires knowledge most infantry soldiers do not have. You need to understand reflection angles, delay timing, how different weapons sound from different distances, how to manipulate echo duration to suggest specific positions. This is not taught in basic training. This is not even taught in advanced reconnaissance courses. This is acoustic warfare, psychological operations, the kind of thing intelligence agencies spend years developing. So where did Leo learn it? How did a regular Canadian infantryman know techniques that would not be formally studied until decades later? Unless he was not regular, unless someone taught him. But let's say he did know these techniques. Let's say he was trained in acoustic manipulation and psychological warfare. That still does not explain the kill rate. German records show 17 soldiers killed that night. 17 confirmed deaths. Leo only had 100 rounds of ammunition when he entered the city. That is a hit rate of 17%. Possible, but unlikely for someone engaging multiple targets in darkness with one eye, unless he was not killing them with bullets. Unless most of those deaths happened another way. Remember his preferred method from earlier in the war? The precise strike to the base of the skull? What if Leo was not just creating noise to scare the Germans? What if he was systematically eliminating key personnel in silence, using gunfire only when he needed to reinforce the illusion? That would explain the discrepancy. It would explain how he moved so fast. It would explain why German soldiers reported feeling hunted rather than simply attacked. But it creates another problem. 17 silent kills in 6 hours while simultaneously running an acoustic deception operation? That is not just impressive. That is impossible. That is beyond any documented human capability. Here is another detail nobody talks about. The German commander in Zwolle was Hauptmann Fritz Kuhn. After the war, he moved to Argentina, lived quietly until he died in 1973. But in 1968, a Canadian journalist tracked him down, asked him about that night. Kuhn's response is recorded. I am going to quote it directly. I have thought about Zwolle every day for 23 years. I have asked myself 1,000 times how I made such a catastrophic mistake, how I convinced myself we faced a battalion when it was one man, and I have no answer, except that something was wrong that night, something beyond tactics or psychology. We were not just scared, we were convinced, utterly convinced, as if the impossibility was not impossible, as if reality had changed. I know how this sounds, but I swear to you, something else was in that city. Something we did not understand then, and I do not understand now. End quote. Something else was in that city. What does that mean? Is Kuhn suggesting supernatural influence, or is he describing a level of psychological warfare so advanced, so perfectly executed that it felt like something beyond human capability. There is one more witness I want to mention, a Dutch civilian named Thea Beckering. She was 16 years old on the night of the liberation. In 2002, she gave an interview to a local newspaper. She said, "I saw the soldier, the Canadian with one eye. He stopped outside my house to reload. I was watching from an upstairs window. He looked up at me, just for a second, and I remember thinking his expression was wrong. He was not afraid. He was not excited. He was not anything. It was like watching a machine, like he was not really there behind his own face. A machine, not really there behind his own face." That is the description of a man who has flipped the switch, who has shut down every human emotion and become pure function, pure mission execution. That is what Leo Major became that night. And maybe that is the real answer to the mystery. Maybe there was no conspiracy, no hidden training program, no classified operation. Maybe Leo Major was just a man who had learned, through trauma and war and complete isolation, how to turn himself into something that could do the impossible. Or maybe that is what they want us to believe. The medal ceremony is scheduled for May 7th, 1945. General Bernard Montgomery himself is supposed to present Leo Major with the Distinguished Conduct Medal, second highest military honor in the British Commonwealth, right below the Victoria Cross. Leo refuses to attend, not quietly, not politely. He sends word through his commanding officer that he will not accept any medal from Montgomery. His exact words, according to witnesses, are, "Montgomery is an incompetent fool who got thousands of men killed through arrogance. I would rather burn the medal than take it from his hand." You have to understand how insane this is. In 1945, you do not refuse a general. You especially do not insult a general. This is the kind of insubordination that gets you court-martialed, dishonorably discharged, possibly imprisoned. But nothing happens to Leo. The ceremony is quietly rescheduled. A different officer presents the medal, and the whole incident disappears from official records. Why? Why does a soldier who publicly insults a commanding general face zero consequences? What kind of protection does he have? What kind of leverage? Unless someone very high up decided Leo Major was too valuable to punish, too dangerous to anger, too important to whatever he really represented. The war ends 3 months later. Leo goes home to Canada, gets married, has a daughter, takes a job as a pipe fitter in Montreal. This should be the end of the story. War hero returns to civilian life, lives quietly, fades into history. Except in 1951, Leo volunteers to go to Korea. He is 30 years old, married, has a child. He has already done his service, already earned his medals. He has absolutely no reason to go back to war, but he does. And what happens in Korea is somehow even more impossible than Zwolle. November 23, 1952, Hill 355. Chinese forces have surrounded a Canadian position. 14,000 Chinese soldiers against 700 Canadians. The situation is desperate. Retreat seems like the only option. Leo Major volunteers to scout the Chinese lines. Alone, at night. He is gone for 3 hours. When he returns, he reports that the Chinese flank is weak, undermanned. He has personally counted positions, identified command posts, mapped artillery placements. Based on his intelligence, the Canadians launch a counterattack. It works. The Chinese retreat. Hill 355 holds. But here is what comes out later. During those 3 hours, Leo did not just scout. He attacked, alone. He destroyed multiple Chinese positions, killed or captured dozens of soldiers, created so much chaos that Chinese commanders thought they were facing a special operations team. One man, 31 years old, one eye, did it again. The Canadian military takes photographs this time, documents the mission. Leo receives another medal, but the photographs? Classified, sealed, not released to the public until 1972. 20 years later, why classify photographs of a heroic action? What is in those images that needed to be hidden for 2 decades? When they finally surface, military analysts notice something strange. The destruction Leo caused does not match his reported equipment. He supposedly had one rifle, one sidearm, standard loadout, but the damage patterns suggest explosives, multiple types, professional placement. Where did he get them? Who supplied him? And why is none of this in the official report? Leo comes home from Korea in 1953. This time, he really does retire. No more deployments, no more volunteering. He works his trade, raises his family, never talks about the war. People try to interview him over the years. Journalists, historians, documentary filmmakers. He refuses everyone, not rudely. He just says no, says it is not important, says other men did more. But his friends notice something. Leo does not sleep well. He works night shifts when he can, prefers darkness to daylight, prefers being alone to being in crowds. He is functional, successful even. But something about normal life does not quite fit him anymore. His daughter later describes growing up with him. She says he was a good father, present, caring, but distant in some fundamental way. Like part of him was always somewhere else, somewhere she could not reach. In 2008, Leo is dying. Cancer. He has weeks left. His son visits him in the hospital. They talk about ordinary things at first. Family, weather, nothing important. Then, Leo suddenly gets serious, looks his son directly in the eye and says, "There are things I did that I cannot tell you, not because I am ashamed, but because they are still classified. Even now, even dying, I am not allowed to talk about certain missions, certain operations. You need to know they happened. You need to know they mattered. But I cannot tell you what they were." His son asks who classified them. Leo just shakes his head, says he does not know anymore, says the people who gave him orders might be dead themselves by now, says the whole system might have forgotten what it was protecting. 3 days later, Leo Major dies, age 87. The obituaries call him a war hero, mention Zwolle, mention Korea, list his medals. They do not mention the hundreds of missions that never made it into official records, the classified operations, the impossible things he did that nobody was allowed to document. And they definitely do not mention Project Nightfall, because officially it never existed. But here is the thing. Leo's military file was partially declassified in 2012. Most of it is standard service record, deployments, commendations, medical history. But there are redactions, entire pages blacked out, sections marked classified with no explanation. In a file from the 1940s, still classified 70 years later, what is in those pages? What did Leo Major do that still cannot be made public? What secrets did he carry to his grave? We will probably never know. The people who classified those documents are gone. The institutional memory has faded. Whatever Leo Major really was, whatever he really did, might be lost forever. Or maybe that is exactly what someone wants. Maybe the mystery is the point. Maybe Leo Major himself is a kind of test, a question the system asks to see who is paying attention. If you made it this far, if you sat through this entire story, and you are still wondering what was real and what was classified and what was simply impossible, then you understand. You get it. Some stories do not have clean endings. Some mysteries do not get solved. If you want more stories like this, more forgotten history that does not quite make sense, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and maybe drop a comment telling me what you think really happened in Zwolle. Because honestly, I am still not sure myself.